Members, I don't know if you knew, but today is Monument Day at the Capitol. The Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, Cook, Quorum,
Good morning, all.
Danielson,
Good morning.
Donovan, Fields, Fields,
Present.
Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Henriksen, Heisey, Holbert, Jaquez Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Lee, Liston, Lundin, Moreno, Pedersen, cover again, or Priola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott,
Here.
Simpson, Smallwood, Sonnenberg, Story,
Here.
Winter, Woodward, again, Woodward, Zenzinger. Mr. President.
Here. The morning roll call is 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused. We have a quorum. There has been an objection by the good senator from El Paso County that this may violate the separation of church and state. But because it's Monument Day at the Capitol, we will let it slide. Will the good senator from Monument please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. I am grateful for the opportunity from the divine to the patriotic. Please, friends, guests, members, colleagues, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the reading of the Journal of Tuesday, March 22nd be dispensed with and that the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
Correctly printed Senate Joint Resolution 9, correctly engrossed. Senate Bill 36, correctly re-engrossed. Senate Bill 126, correctly revised. House Bill 1022, 1032, 1092, 1279, correctly revised. House Bill 1038, 1211, 1245, 1250, correctly enrolled. Senate Bill 86.
Third reading of bills. Consent calendar. Will the clerk please read the titles to all the bills on the consent calendar?
House Bill 1032, Representatives Bockenfeld and Doherty, Senators Kirkmeyer and Bridges, concerning jury duty postponement for a student enrolled in an institution of higher education outside the state of Colorado. House Bill 1092, Representatives Soper and Roberts, Senators Bridges and Quorum, concerning the issuance of loans by irrigation districts to landowners for certain purposes. House Bill 1022, Representatives Roberts and Escar, Senators Woodward and Henriksen, concerning modifications to the administration of the Colorado State Fair and Industrial Exposition. Senate Bill 36, Senators Hanson and Heisey, Representatives Burton Van Winkle, concerning a payment to the statewide death and disability trust fund to pay benefits for members hired before January 1st, 1997, and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the passage of all the bills on the third reading consent calendar, which includes House Bills 1032, 1092, 1022, and Senate Bill 36.
Is there any discussion on any of the bills? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of all the bills and the third reading of bills consent calendar. Are there any no votes? Senator Smallwood.
Mr. President, I'd like to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092.
Senator Smallwood will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092. Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that I be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092 and Senate Bill 036.
Senator Lundin will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092 and Senate Bill 36. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Same request. I ask to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092 and Senate Bill 36.
Minority Leader will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092 and Senate Bill 36. Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092.
Senator Liston will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, would like to be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092.
Senator Priola will be recorded as a no vote on House Bill 1092. Back for more.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 36 as well.
Senator Smallwood will be recorded as a no vote on Senate Bill 36. With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1032 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Cook, Majority Leader Moreno, Lee, Woodward, Heisey, with a vote of 30 ayes, 5 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1092 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Simpson, Donovan, Lee, with a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1022 is passed. Co-sponsors, House Bill 1022. Senators Priola, Bridges. Uh-oh. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize. Would you please add me as a co-sponsor on House Bill 1092?
Senator Sonnenberg will be recorded as a co-sponsor for House Bill 1092. Members, we are on co-sponsors for House Bill 1022 now. Senators Simpson, Heisey, Sonnenberg, with a vote of 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 36 is passed. Co-sponsor, Senate Bill 36. Senators Cook, Rodriguez, Bridges, Kolker, Majority Leader Moreno, Buckner, Lee, Sonnenberg. Someone's in a good mood. Janal. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege by the senators from Arvada and Carbondale.
The motion is to proceed out of order for moments of personal privilege. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The Senate will proceed out of order for moments of personal privilege. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Members, today is Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Awareness Day, and so we have a tribute in order to commemorate this important day. You may have noticed, well, you should have ordinarily noticed, a little Oscar on your desk, and unfortunately I left mine on my desk. I don't know if the senator from Fort Collins would be willing to lift that up. So this Oscar is related to today's event, because when we stop to think about it, most of us know someone with an intellectual or developmental disability, or IDD as it's commonly referred to. And whether it is someone in your own family or your circle of friends, your neighbors or your colleagues, I encourage you to bring to mind someone whom you know who is living with autism, Down syndrome, Fragile X, cerebral palsy, or another disability. And today, thanks to awareness about the importance of inclusion, changing societal expectations, and community-based services, people with IDD are more present than ever in our communities. They attend public schools, participate in the general education classroom, they work and volunteer alongside their non-disabled peers, and they even graduate from college.
Senator Rankin.
Mr. President, I ask for a moment of personal privilege so that I might join in this tribute to our folks who both are clients in the IDD services and those who provide, and we call them direct service providers. We pause today to acknowledge the inherent value and the contributions of these individuals, and more importantly, to raise awareness of them and their own needs and desires. For the past 2 years, it's been especially challenging for these individuals who already suffer from a lack of inclusion in society and are in many ways barred from community access that we're all so used to. As we begin to return to normal, though, I think it's even more important that we stop and consider the struggles of these people as they access needed services and serve due to a severe workforce. I just talked with my local community center board CEO this morning, and because I was thinking about this, and they've lost 20% of their workforce. Trying to get them back now and hire more people. But we talked about, the challenges of people going to work every day in this environment who are, have experience with other sorts of occupations and things where they have more personal freedom. And this is a difficult job. So, I think we're facing a severe workforce problem. So we need to review our commitment as lawmakers to make sure that these community-based services, and these folks cover both home-based and group home services, we need to make sure those services are available. You may remember last year we were wearing stickers around that said, "End the wait." We've had thousands of people on the wait list for these services, and it's complicated. There are actually 10 different waivers, Medicaid and Human Services waivers, that apply to these folks. So it's not an easy task to get the services. So one thing we need to do, we actually had, you may recall, $530 million of increased Medicaid match that went to home and community-based services, short-term money. We currently have 70 different programs in parallel, and our department's doing a good job of implementing these things to update our infrastructure. Part of that is a $15 an hour minimum wage, and we need to be able to sustain that after this one-time money is over. So I want you all to keep that in mind. But my last point, we also need to commit ourselves to getting to know people. I want to tell you my story. 12 years ago, when I first ran for office, my local CEO of what's called CCB, called up and said, "You can't run for office unless you understand what we do." So I went over and visited, and I had really no awareness of this community. I mean, unlike many of you, I didn't know somebody personally or have a family person involved in IDD, but I did that, and that started a journey for me to, I hope, be a real champion for IDD services. About 2 years ago, my wife and I visited our local community center board, and we met David. I won't use his last name. And, you know, he especially appealed to us because he was so enthusiastic about sports and his involvement in Special Olympics and, you know, just his life. And so we got interested, and we started communicating with David, writing letters. And we literally got a letter about once a week. And David told us about visiting his mother, the sports he was involved in, great sports fan, and what he had for breakfast. So I got very familiar with David's breakfast, but I haven't heard from him in over a month. And that, I knew something was wrong. So this morning when I called Sarah, I said, "What happened to David?" David's mother died. David fell in skiing for Special Olympics and broke his leg. And I feel so bad that I just sensed, you know, with this 2 week, a month gap, that something was wrong. So, you know, that means that we have to reach out to David, express our sympathy, know that we're there for him. But I would like to appeal to every last one of us to get to know your local community center board. Go visit group homes. We've done this together, by the way. Joint Budget Committee has been a real champion of this. But I would like for all of you to get to know one IDD person. Just help them enjoy their life, help them find employment. You know, just be a friend. It's made so much difference to Joyce and I that I wanted to share that with you and ask you to do the same.
Senator Zenzinger.
Along the same veins, I want to talk a little bit about an individual that I have come to know, and that's Skylar. He is an individual with cerebral palsy who lives in my district, and I was on the Masters swim team with his mother, and this went back 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, when Skylar was a student in school, I got to hear just at the swimming pool, you know, in between laps and in the locker room, all of the difficulty and the challenges that this family experienced with just putting together Skylar's IEP, just putting together the basic services that Skylar deserved as a part of his education here in Colorado. Then they opened up my eyes to this thing called the waiting list, and I had no idea what they were talking about. I said, waiting list? What are they waiting for? And they really kind of picked apart the issue that they had with regard to the comprehensive services waiver and how we don't actually fund enough slots for everybody in the state who would like to be on the comprehensive waiver to have it. And all it does is it allows these individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to be able to live their lives to the fullest, to be fully integrated into our society, to have jobs, to have good health care, to be in social situations just like everybody else. And so once I became aware that there was this waiting list, it kind of became a new quest for me to figure out what we needed to do in order to end that waiting list. And that was way before I was ever in elected office. I am very proud of the work that we have done at the legislature to chip away at that waiting list, but we are not done. There is still so much more work to do. Members, today you are being invited to walk the red carpet. Over at the Old Supreme Court chambers, if you RSVP'd, you will receive a boxed lunch, and on that boxed lunch, there will be a little card that will indicate who the service providers are in your district. And what we are asking is that when you pick up your Oscar and walk the red carpet for us today, there are going to be hundreds of IDD individuals, families, service providers that are going to be watching online because of COVID. They're going to be joining us virtually, and they're going to ask for us to give them a quick shout out. If you'll just pick up your box lunch and just say a quick word, give them a shout out, say hello, tell them how much they mean to us, we would really appreciate that. And you can also participate and watch that virtual luncheon today, and the links have all been emailed to you, so we certainly hope that you will help us commemorate this very special day. We will not read for you the entire tribute that we produced for you today. We just really appreciate your attention, and we thank you for your time.
Third reading of bills. Final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1279?
House Bill 1279 by Representatives Froelich and Esgar, Senator Gonzalez, concerning the codification of a person's fundamental right to make reproductive health care decisions free from government interference.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1279 on third reading and final passage.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I rise in opposition of House Bill 1279. Before I get started, I first want to thank everybody for a respectful debate on the issue yesterday. I also want to thank my fellow members for conducting themselves with decorum that this body deserves. This issue, this bill, leaves me with a heavy heart for a number of reasons. What it will mean for the state of Colorado, what it means for the miracle of life in our state going forward. But to those listening to this debate, I think you need to understand that we can run amendments and talk for hours and hours and days, but the real change needs to come with changing people's minds and hearts outside of this chamber to get them to understand the miracle and the sanctity of life from conception and to value it with all their heart. The men of our nation need to step up, grow up, and own up, because they too are a part of this equation. I feel that few, if any, women would ever consider this if they knew that they had a partner that would support them to the ends of the earth in raising a child. We need to change our culture to having a culture of hospitality towards children that values them for the future that they are, the hope, the promise. Adoption needs to be the focus if raising a child is not in your ability. See them as a blessing, not a curse, because from my perspective, they are a blessing, each and every one of them, from Almighty. In our household, from time to time, my wife becomes overburdened and stressed at one or two of our children, and I remind her that one day they will be gone, one day they will be grown up, and we will miss the noise and the annoyances and the broken things and the unflushed toilets and all that comes with family life. The votes today are decided. They were decided on Election Day, more or less. House Bill 1279 will pass with 20 ayes and 15 noes. To change this outcome, there needs to be change at the ballot box. Along with the changing of hearts and minds, it requires many hours of knocking on doors, raising money for candidates, organizing precincts, because that is the system our founders put in place for us to fight it out here with amendments and speeches and in precincts and at the ballot box, not with guns and bombs and drones like we see in other parts of the world. I will say, though, there is some good news, not in this bill, but in the general movement, in that the reason this bill is coming forward is because there is a sea change at the federal level, and that many states will have a higher standard for protecting life, as I feel they should. And examples like Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett will be a new shining example for men and women in the future of our country. Again, members, I ask for a no vote on House Bill 1279.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Share support. I appreciate the comments from my colleague from Adams County. I rise in opposition to House Bill 1279. Having principled positions is not about winning or losing. Having principled positions is about holding to those positions regardless of the pressure to change or the outcome. That's what having principled positions is about. This, House Bill 1279, the subject of this bill, is about a principled position for me, and I believe all of us. But we don't hold to the same principles. We see this vote falling very much along party lines. I pray, I hope that I am wrong, but I believe that the good senator from Adams County is correct. I believe there are 15 no's for this bill, and I believe that there are 20 yes. I hope I'm wrong. 18 is the critical measure. Whatever 18 or more of us, a majority of 35, decide, that's what happens. After the 13 or 14 hours of debate, thank you again to the 13 members of the Senate Minority Caucus who are here in the chamber. 2 of our members were out on the western slope participating remotely, but to the 13 of us who were here in the chamber, thank you. A heroic effort. We saw our colleagues in the House debate for 24 to 25 hours. There's 24 of them. We at least matched per member the amount of time. Not something to brag about. Not something necessarily to be proud of. We will lose. But having a principled position, this is one, is not about winning or losing. It's not about caving to pressure to change. It's about holding to those positions regardless of that pressure or the outcome. That's what makes a principled position different than all of the other decisions that we make on all of the hundreds of bills that come through here. There's a lot of things that don't really fall upon a matter of principle. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Is it a proper role of government? Is it not? We have all kinds of things that we can measure our yes or our no. When I am invited to lead prayer, you probably have heard it's a regular part of my prayer life that I refer to every word, thought, or action. In my faith, I believe that one day that I will stand before my Creator and that I will be accountable for any word, every word, thought, and action that I've had during this time that I am alive here on this earth. Maybe you don't believe that. That's okay. I do. And that's okay too. But if my faith is right and I am held accountable for that, I will be accountable for a no vote on this bill. Does that mean that I want to put my view of the world, my faith, on others? No. It's because my principal position is that human life is created by the Creator. And the only reason that we created humans might take the life of another would be for murder. That was a different discussion. Bipartisan support for a bill to do away with the death penalty in this state. I was a no. For me, that was a principled position. During the 14 hours or so of debate yesterday, we heard a lot of discussion about the innocence of human life before birth. See, I believe, I know, it is a principled position for me that human life, all life, but human life, begins at conception. We can't, none of us could be here if our human existence had not occurred at that point. And to purposefully step in and stop that process of human development, human life, for me, is wrong. It's a principled position. We should do everything possible to save the life of the mother and the child whenever we're confronted with that kind of scenario. And maybe as fallible human beings with limited abilities or resources, maybe we fail to save the life of the mother and the child. But we should try. We should apply every resource, every technology, every ability to preserve the life of the mother and the child. That's what I believe. I didn't share this story yesterday, but my faith came to me at 31, 1992. My wife and I became friends with two people who had been in that faith for much longer than I. Alan, Stormy. If you're out there, I'm sorry it's been so long since we've visited. Life took us apart. My wife and I received a call that Stormy had delivered their daughter. But it was about 20 weeks early. She may have been at 21 weeks, but this was back in 1992. The technology was not what it is today. My wife and I braced each other, braced for this, and went to the hospital to console, to comfort, to support our friends. Alan and Stormy. It'll be okay. We'll get through this. But when we got to the hospital, we didn't find two friends that needed to be comforted. We were confronted by a mother and a father who were elated. They were so excited that their daughter was with them. Then we were invited to go see their daughter. bracing myself. What we saw at that 21-week-old little girl, for those of you who might count it differently, 20 weeks of gestational development. She looked rather like a Barbie doll. I could not believe that a human being that small was actually moving around and alive and there and living. The doctors, of course, cautioned Alan and Stormy that their daughter was in almost a pure, maybe it was a pure oxygen environment in this incubator. And because she was breathing pure oxygen, it was almost certain that she would be blind, that her retinas would detach, and that she would be blind. This is the kind of conversation that people who were in that sort of scenario that Alan and Stormy were in, some might say, we're going to have to let her go. That's not what Alan and Stormy did. No. They praised God for blessing them with a daughter. I wasn't there to comfort them. They were comforting me. I was learning about faith. The doctor said, yes, she'll be blind. She may not live. She's not likely to live. She will probably be developmentally disabled. If she lives, she'll be very small. She lived. She lived. She had a first birthday, and she had a 5th birthday, and she had a 10th birthday. She's alive. She's not blind. Yes, she has to wear glasses. That was 30 years ago. Shame on me for not knowing this, but I hope that she's a mom. I hope that Alan and Stormy are grandparents. I asked about Gianna Jessen, the abortion survivor, last night. Her mom went to an abortion clinic and they induced a saline abortion. And Gianna was expelled from the womb. And she lived. She has scars, burn marks from that saline solution because that's painful. That torture, it's not a blob of flesh. Gianna lived. So I asked last night, in your mind, to the credit of my friend from Douglas County, he asked, when do you think life begins? He talked about how different faiths view that differently. Is it at their first breath? I believe it's at conception. When was Gianna Jessen a human being with rights? Was it when the saline was injected? When she began to feel that burning? When she started kicking against that pain? Was it when she was expelled out of the womb? Was it when she hit the stainless steel table? Was it when her first scream became audible? For me, it's at the moment of conception. We had debate yesterday. Why is this so one-sided? Why are not the views of others included here? Why is there not some balance? I shared the story of the day that Gianna came to the Capitol. My friend, my mentor, my predecessor here in the Senate, then Representative Ted Harvey, invited this young lady to sing the Star-Spangled Banner, the national anthem, in the State House, and all 65 representatives stood and sang those words with Gianna. And then Ted introduced her. This is Gianna Jessen, abortion survivor. And along party lines, there was respect and admiration and people who wanted to meet her, and there was outrage on the other side. Gianna, if you happen to see this, if you happen to hear my comments, thank you again for being such a powerful witness for life. for human beings who have not yet been born. Thank you for having the courage to come sing the national anthem here, where at one moment all 65 representatives were proud and standing together and singing with you. And then along party lines, some became outraged at the audacity that you were here singing the national anthem and alive, given your unique story. I mentioned yesterday, I think now there are 49 days left in my legislative career, almost 1,400 days as a legislator. This is the hardest bill. This is the bill I dislike the most of all of the hundreds of bills. I think in 11, now going on 12 years, 600, 700 bills a year, I'm somewhere around 7,000 bills. Haven't voted on all of them. Some of them died in the other chamber before I ever saw those bills, but gosh, I voted yes or no on a lot of bills now in 12 sessions. This is the hardest bill, but the easiest vote. I promised people in Douglas County in the old House District 44 that I was and would be 100% pro-life. I know that position doesn't hold in all Senate districts, all 35 geographic districts in Colorado. There are geographic districts where I'm sure you cannot get elected if you say such things. In fact, there are some districts where you might have to say the opposite. But where I live, where we live, the majority of voters need to hear that, need to be reassured by that. And I would say the 14 other members of the Senate Minority Caucus, Republicans, they live in districts where the majority of voters needed to hear that or something similar. Having a principled position is not about winning or losing. It's not about winning or losing. It's about holding to that position or those positions regardless of the pressure to change or the outcome. I'm pro-life. I'm a no vote on 1279. And I pray that by some miracle, 17 more of you might share that position. I ask for a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, appreciate the ability to spend a few minutes with you again this morning. Appreciate words from my colleagues from Douglas County, particularly comments from my colleague, my neighbor from Adams County. We talk about this issue a lot. I think he worded it well. And so I got to my hotel last night because I wasn't going to drive all the way to Parker at midnight. Thought I would just collapse into bed, fall asleep, and enjoy a quick 5 hours. And I guess not surprisingly, that didn't happen at all. You know, the conversation from last night rolling through my head, wondering what else I could have said, what else I should have said to try to just accurately reflect what I'm hearing. No, I'm not going to change anybody's mind. I'd like to think that I'm not that naive. But I think before I finally fell asleep, what hit me and what gave me some comfort is exactly what you just heard from the minority leader, that this is probably not a topic that has winners or losers, legislatively speaking. If the folks on either side of this debate have it their way, there's going to be losers. I view this bill and it passing here in the state of Colorado as a loser for the citizens of our state, because we're, in my opinion, codifying things that I believe the vast majority of citizens don't believe in, like partial birth abortions. I don't believe most of the people in Colorado are okay with partial birth abortions. This bill, to me, codifies that. Same-day abortions, the same day meaning same day of delivery abortions. I don't think I'm in the minority when it comes to thinking that way. I don't think that I'm in the minority when it comes to parental notification. I very well might be in the minority when it comes to parental consent. I like the idea of parental consent. My guess is many or most of you do not. But parental notification, I haven't seen any polling on that, but I've sure talked to a lot of parents. We are codifying no parental notification. And despite my weepy pleadings, we didn't have anybody come to the well to discuss why the lack of parental notification was so necessary in this bill, and why the inclusion of day of delivery abortions was included in this bill. And that's disappointing. Because to me, that was one of the most important parts of the debate. Why do you want that in there? And I don't pretend to know the answers, because as I acknowledged in my rambling monologue early in the day, I don't know what a lot of you are thinking. I don't know how you were raised. I don't know what religion you come from, or lack of religion, or what. And so I was seeking to understand that, and it's disappointing that I didn't get that. Procedurally speaking, tactically speaking, I'm most worried by what I fear is going to be an infringement on the rights of the people who disagree with you to be able to express those feelings. When we say, concerning the codification of a person's fundamental right to make reproductive health care decisions free from government interference, and we define that so loosely, we define it so loosely that none of us on our side felt that we comfortably come away knowing that future legislators can come to the well and introduce a memorial or a resolution or a tribute without that being criminalized in this piece of legislation. I don't think the majority of Coloradans like that. This is so vaguely written when it comes to what is interference, what is applying a burden. I introduced that as an amendment, and I thought we would get agreement on that. But we didn't. And quite honestly, I don't think I could have written that amendment any more clearly. Nothing in this bill would take that right away from the future legislators or legislatures to be able to not change the law, but just to do a tribute or a resolution. And even that was even that was a no-go. So those things concern me. So people were texting me last night at midnight and 12:30, like, so you lost and it's over. And again, I think no matter what somebody loses, if on those same extremes, let's say abortion across our country is made illegal everywhere, will I feel like I've won? I don't think so. You heard the words from my colleague from El Paso County, and I think all that would potentially do is open up another enormous concern about dangerous abortions that would be happening across our country. And would we feel like we win if that starts to happen? I don't think so. So how do we win? If legalizing day of delivery abortions and partial birth abortions doesn't make us winners, and leaving the only outlet for our citizens seeking abortions is to get illegal, dangerous abortions, how do we win? Well, I would submit to you, colleagues, that in my eyes, we're already starting to win. Because I truly believe that if we were looking at everybody in this building, other than maybe one or two people, all of the rest of us would agree that the world would be better if there were fewer abortions. Because again, I haven't talked to anybody. I'm 51 years old. I haven't talked to a single person who said, you know what we need in this country is more abortions. That would make this country a better place. Have any of you heard that from anybody ever? That the world would be a better place? Maybe only if you're soulless and believe that it helps tilt the socioeconomic scale in some perverted way, right? Which, Lord knows, nobody in this room would ever think that way, thank God. So, I believe strongly that what we really want at the end of the day is fewer abortions. And that is happening. And that's why I'm optimistic. That's why I feel like I've made a spiritual transformation in 24 hours from dejected and pessimistic to really looking at the bigger picture that when Roe versus Wade came down, we saw an increase in the number of abortions. 1974, 1975, 1970, all the way up to about 1980. And then what happened, colleagues? It started to fall, and fall, and fall, and continue to fall. You know, like every chart has its peaks and troughs, but generally speaking, the rate of abortion in this country has fallen more or less every year from 1980 until last year or the year before last.
Senator Smallwood, I assume you want to go into your next 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would indeed like to do so. So, I guess we can look at those CDC statistics. And by the way, the statistics that I'm quoting are from the CDC. So if you'd like to look at the rate of abortions, and by the way, the CDC, somebody needs to let them know to change the terminology to start calling it abortion care because the CDC calls it abortions. So since we're now calling it abortion care, somebody needs to reach out to those folks. The CDC says the rate of abortions is falling every single year. So maybe there is a way that both sides can win in this. The biggest fall, by the way, according to the CDC, on the rate of abortions, not abortion care, on the rate of abortions, happened when the Affordable Care Act passed and things like contraception were introduced as part of coverage. Which is why you've heard me too many times in this same spot saying some of the worst things that happened in healthcare happened because of the Affordable Care Act, and some of the best things that happened to healthcare in this country happened due to the Affordable Care Act. And widespread inclusion of contraception in every single health insurance plan sold in this country includes that, and I support that. So maybe the real answer, colleagues, is not to bring the heavy hand of government into this conversation, no matter which side you fall on, but to do what the Senator from Adams County just discussed, which is continue on the path that we're on, providing women in this country an alternative to abortion that works, and finally starting to change how society views a pregnant person. And maybe to flip things 180 degrees from a young woman feeling that her life is ruined to instead, perhaps you're like me, where you feel that this is one of the best things that ever happened to you, being able to be a parent. Because it's true for me. So with this combination of ideas and thoughts, here's what I promise to you, is I am going to redouble my efforts in those areas. And I'm not going to quit. And I'm not going to give up. I mean, I might quit here. I'm not going to quit. Because there's still more work that we can do. There's still work that just within the last few years, done when it comes to contraceptives for our Medicaid population. This wasn't done decades ago. This was done within the last few years. Safe haven for newborns. I believe every single person who was here voted yes on that bill. Proud to have a bipartisan, bicameral bill like that that said, you know what? If you're pregnant and you don't want to keep this child, guess what? You don't have to kill that baby. There's another option for you. There's another alternative for you. And that wasn't my idea, but it sure needed to be expanded on. And I'm the farthest thing from the smartest person in this room, so what are your ideas? Those were some of mine. What are your ideas to where instead of telling young women in this country, your life is ruined, you should go have an abortion, to instead saying, here's some other things for you to think about so that we can all win, because the rate of abortion will continue to fall. The extremists who want whatever they want in a bill can have that, and it won't matter, colleagues. It won't matter. At least, hopefully, not for most. So that's my commitment to you. And it's my ask of you, is that you help me come up with other ideas. Because those are nonpartisan ideas. Or bipartisan ideas. And thanks for letting me be me and tell you who I am and what I believe in, and know that I'm committed to working to understand who you are and what you believe in. Doesn't make me any less disappointed that we couldn't make changes to this bill that I was going to vote no on regardless, but I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Smallwood. Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. This debate that we've had, extended debate over the last 24 plus hours, has been unusual. We push and pull and fight and tussle over just about everything. There are many things that we all seem to agree on, but many things that we tussle over routinely. Budget, process issues, practical things. We have different perspectives on how we should educate our children and what government's proper role in the education of our children is. And we give and take and push and pull on that $14 billion government-funded enterprise constantly. We push and pull on things like transportation. Can we afford to fix the roads, or should we not fix the roads and have more buses and trains? And we get into some pretty vigorous throwdowns over those policy issues. But this issue is different. We enter into the conversation pretty well certain what our perspectives are and not likely to change our perspectives. But yet we continue to engage in the conversation, and for me it's because hope springs eternal. I hope that we move the conversation in a way where we all find some way to benefit society. Now, I think many of the best things that come to us as individuals in society are outside of government. It comes through our church, through a service organization, through our families. And I'm grateful that that's how we're made up. I'm also grateful when government gets something right and speaks beneficially into the conversation. I'm challenged with this specific bill because, in fact, I think it intrudes in a way that is painful into the life of someone who, quite frankly, has no capacity, no ability to defend themselves. With such a challenging, stark, seemingly binary set of questions and such divergent or far apart perspectives, I am especially grateful to my colleagues and, quite frankly, to all of the guests who joined us in the gallery, the people that have been in the building, for the level of decorum and respect and decency that we have all presented to each other, colleagues here and citizens in the building, as we grapple with this incredibly challenging set of questions. So I thank you again for the decorum that everyone has shown. We walked through an array of arguments for and against this Bill 1279, which I have from the beginning opposed, tried to improve with some amendments, although I probably would never know, certainly would never have been able to get to a yes vote. But I think we could have improved it as a matter of government policy on behalf of the people. And I wish we had, quite frankly. We heard arguments around policy. We heard discussions of scientific fact and descriptions of what the medical processes are like for the provider, for the mother, for the egg, embryo, fetus, baby, child. We heard very emotional discussions. This bill that intersects with life and death brought, I think, a level of emotion and a lump in the throat to everyone who came into the well. And for some of us, that overflowed. And that speaks to the level of humanity and importance of this issue and how it connects with each of us as individuals and why it's so important that, as I will say in my concluding remarks, that we continue to work on this. We also talked about what it means to us as a society and the philosophical aspects of what this means. But let me come back specifically to 1279 as the black letters on white pages that may go into the red books, and what it means. It is not a codification of Roe v. Wade. It is not a codification of the existing laws as they are applied in the state of Colorado based on federal statute, state statute, federal case law, and state case law. It is dramatically broader. It's much more broad. It is sweeping in its nature. It expands significantly the threat to an egg, embryo, fetus, baby, child. It changes the bar in some significant ways. In Roe v. Wade, the United States Supreme Court found that the right to abortion is, quoting from the decision, not absolute and must be balanced against the government's interest in protecting women's health and protecting prenatal life. Roe v. Wade says find a balance. The bill is brought in anticipation of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, but it does not hold the line at what Roe v. Wade calls for. It extends dramatically the rights to abortion, the access and likelihood of abortion, and the language around abortion. We must be clear. We brought 16 amendments as an effort to converse on what the ultimate black words on white pages in red books might look like. We dealt with a number of things that are important. I would say places where 1279 is too extreme to meet the appetite of the Colorado public. It's pretty clear that it is open to interpretation as to whether the rights and requirements of parental notification will exist if 1279 passes. Since it's unsure, it is a problem. Since it's unsure, it's highly likely that there will be circumstances where parents will not know what's going on in their most precious element of their life, their child's life, in the moment when that child probably needs those parents most. That's a change that comes with 1279, and there were amendments, 2 different amendments offered on this one, to say, we just want to be clear. The bill does not intend to remove the right to parental notification. We talked about the people's right, broadly, the people's right to redress of government, that the fact that it is reserved to them the right to petition, to remove a part of or all of a law unless there are specific health and safety reasons. I believe that the thumb on the scale for that must always be on behalf of the people. The people have the right to do that which they will do unless there is a clear pressing need. I do not believe the evidentiary bar of clear pressing need has been met, and that we should have put a petition clause on this particular bill instead of the safety clause that it has. We ran amendments that would have made it really clear that this bill does not say you lose your First Amendment rights if you want to talk about abortion. As drafted, the bill causes doubt around that. If you oppose abortion, do you lose your right as a public official, as someone in government in some place, to speak clearly? That's a challenge. One of the biggest parts of this bill that I struggle with is the concept of how you shift the public conversation from a perspective that is firmly held to a different perspective, and you do it over time by virtue of the language you use. You have all heard, because this is a chamber of debaters, you have all heard, he who controls, she who controls the terms of debate wins the debate. This bill dramatically changes the language around abortion. It drops in multiple euphemisms in places where abortion should be used, words like reproductive health care, are used instead. We offered amendments to clean that up. The biggest challenge inside the bill is language that eliminates, takes away, makes clear that it is the perspective of this bill and the perspective of the law, should it become law, that the egg, embryo, fetus, baby, child does not have independent or derivative rights. They're gone.
Senator Lundin, I assume you want to go into your next 10 minutes?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I would like to go to my next 45 minutes. Thank you.
Please proceed.
There was possibly, and I had several constituents reach out to me via text late last night, early this morning, frankly, to say, I listened to the debate and my heart caught in my throat when a definition of what abortion is, the D and C, the D and E, it was described. This is part of the making the debate and discussion, the understanding of what's actually happening real. Those constituents said, oh my gosh. I knew conceptually, but as that description of what it is happened and was read as part of the debate, my heart caught in my throat, and it was challenging, heartbreaking. Potentially the most challenging amendment that was offered that did not get accepted for me was a really simple amendment that said the bill purports to be anticipation of and in response to a circumstance that may happen in the future, and that's the overturning of Roe v. Wade. We want to do this in case. So the amendment that said simply, okay, if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, then the bill becomes active. It's kind of a safety clause. Was not accepted onto the bill. And I think the prime impulse, the prime impetus, the prime call for the bill, as in anticipation of Roe v. Wade being rejected, kind of debases the entire discussion and argument. There were a number of other amendments of all sorts of potential change, 16 in all that were offered. I would have preferred that some of them get in. I think it would have been better for the broader conversation that we all seek to have, and that is how to tune things up, how to find the best that we can get to as iron sharpens iron in very difficult perspectives or different perspectives. But for me, the biggest challenge in this whole thing, and it's where I began the debate, and I'll end the debate, my portion of the debate on this, is the challenge that there are two, bless you, there are two, I believe, as part of my understanding, as part of my belief in the fact pattern, and as part of my faith, that there are two individuals we need to think about. And I always want to be very, very clear. And I want to use all the proper languages. I want to acknowledge all the proper perspectives. But for me, it's really clear that it's a young woman by definition, because it's a woman of childbearing age. And some women have children really late in life, but generally, it's a young woman. And it's an egg, embryo, fetus, baby, child that we are also contemplating. And the pursuit of a balance, a societal striving to get at the best possible result we can get to with regard to that, to help the young woman in crisis, to provide support for the young woman in crisis, and to acknowledge that there's a second precious being as well to be considered. I began my comments yesterday by calling out the fact that we frequently refer to former leaders, either political or spiritual or philosophical leaders, in trying to find ourselves grounded in who we are. And one of those phrases that we come back to occasionally is, a society is judged by how it treats the weakest among itself. Hubert Humphrey said, and this is important, what Humphrey had to say, because this is exactly what we're intersecting with. Government, the moral test of government, is how that government treats those who are in the dawn of life. Now, from my perspective, that dawn begins at conception. The children, says Humphrey, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped. Mahatma Gandhi said, a nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members. From my faith tradition, the psalmist is clear. Psalm 139, for you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb, in Psalm 22:9. Yet you brought me, the acknowledgement of a sentient being, you brought me out of the womb. Me, I existed before delivery. You made me trust in you even at my mother's breast. And Khalil Gibran, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. So I conclude with a resolute no vote in the most challenging bill of my legislative career. And hope springs eternal. Not that I'm going to change a vote, but that we might change our hearts and seek every element we can. I mentioned in passing at the well last night, and I want to come back to the place where I have engaged in this particular issue, not through government, but through society. It's through a ministry, is with the Life Network. And when I was not in politics and had a little more cash flow, I was a little more generous in what I could provide and support to this group. Their statement is valuing life, transforming lives. And they work in crisis pregnancies. And they take all comers under all circumstances and allow for all perspectives and all potential outcomes, frankly, because they love the individual who shows up on their doorstep. The mission of Life Network, I'm reading from their website, I'd encourage you to go out and look at it, is to cultivate a community that values life, and then again, as an acknowledgement of my faith tradition, through the love of Christ. And there are several points of how they achieve this. Presenting the gospel of Jesus Christ, providing life-affirming alternatives to abortion, promoting sexual integrity and healthy decisions, empowering parents to be healthy and hopeful, giving hope and healing in post-abortion cases, and engaging the community to advance life. And so, as we set up the bright lines of law, which is our job, I call us also to reach outside the realms of government and find other places where we can intersect with, engage with, speak love and encouragement and support to all individuals who might be struggling with what's called a crisis pregnancy, and to the extent we possibly can, to the protection of innocent life still in its mother's womb. Colleagues, I appreciate you all. I appreciate the fact your perspectives are not necessarily my perspectives. And I will be a resolute and firm no vote, but seek to, with you, do everything I possibly can in my role as a legislator and in my call on my life as a human being called to love God and love others, to help in any way I can, and to work with you to help us all find ways how we can help those in struggling, in need, in difficulty in society. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. I rise in support of this important measure. I think Most of you know and have seen me on the screen recently with my newborn baby son, Callum. I've been able to participate remotely to keep him safe from COVID, and it's been a blessing to our family to be able to care for him in this way. So thank you again for bearing with us and allowing me to participate in this manner. It's really also been wonderful that I had a few months of maternity leave to properly care for my newborn after he was born. And I think, on the tail end of that leave, we spent 10 days in the hospital in the intensive care unit, which I wouldn't have been able to do in a way that was, enough for him if I didn't have parental leave. But having just had a baby, it has been very interesting during the lead up to this bill, of which I am one of its many co-sponsors, to experience political attacks for supporting reproductive health equity while daring to have a baby and a family of my own. Nothing better illustrates the necessity of this bill. In this mindset is a fundamental disconnect that cannot see that it is not only possible for me to have a family while having the right to choose how to go about it, but that actually you cannot separate these two things in a free and democratic society. It is incredibly dangerous that those who share this fundamental misunderstanding seek to use the police power of government to impose their choices and decisions on women. This is dangerous to us all, men and women. It is dangerous to our system of liberty. It is dangerous to the health and well-being of women in particular. But it is dangerous to a shared value system that in America, that individuals' health and dignity are worth something. Throughout this debate, I have been consistently troubled when I have seen and heard a profound lack of understanding of the basic science of reproductive health by folks who want to then use their policymaking power to make profoundly significant choices in the lives of others. This isn't just about abortion care, but all aspects of reproductive health care. Nothing has illustrated the need for this bill quite like the opposition to it. But more important than the specific arguments of this debate are the real-world consequences we are seeing around the country as far-right legislators and judges seek to punish and control women and their doctors. Colorado takes this action today because we don't have to look far or hard to see how other states around the country are working to turn the clock back on women's rights. This bill is necessary because Republican-controlled states around the country are currently competing with each other to develop and pass more and more extreme laws that infringe on the liberty of women. This race to the bottom is terrifying and obligates us to take action in Colorado. For example, Texas has created a system to put bounties on pregnant women and their doctors. This disgraceful legislation that works to turn neighbor against neighbor, to pay off citizens to surveil and spy on pregnant women, is an affront to American values and will be deeply corrosive to society. Oklahoma, just today, has passed a total abortion ban in clear violation of the United States Constitution. Oklahoma has also proposed legislation to establish a government database identifying and tracking women who seek abortion care. Missouri is looking at legislation that would inhibit the right of women to travel across state lines if they choose to seek reproductive health care. Another Missouri bill would ban treatment for life-threatening ectopic pregnancies. For those of you who do not know, this is a non-viable pregnancy. The fetus is not alive and the failed pregnancy can be deadly to the woman or jeopardize her ability to have children. This isn't about life. This is about force, control, and power. These are policies that wouldn't ban abortion, and they are so sweeping that they would criminalize women for seeking medical care after their miscarriage, ban common forms of over-the-counter contraception, ban Plan B for all women, even survivors of sexual assault. They would force survivors of incest to carry their rapist babies to term, They would criminalize basic reproductive health care that has been an accessible right under the United States Constitution's 4th, 5th, and 9th Amendments for over 57 years. Across the nation, Republican states are also working to push personhood policies into law. Personhood policies that Colorado voters have rejected over and over and over again. The mask is off. I used to be a political director for NARAL Pro-Choice Colorado. One of my mentors there once told me, a woman will risk her life to not have a child. And that same woman, at another point in her life, will absolutely risk her life again to become a mother. The challenge for American women today is that a national movement of far-right extremists is putting more women's lives at risk in both circumstances. This bill before us today supports women in both circumstances, because make no mistake, these other states are jeopardizing the health and lives of their citizens in both circumstances, women who are seeking to become parents and women who cannot. Opponents would like us to believe that their opposition to this is only rooted in stopping abortions. But there have actually been laws here in Colorado that do reduce the number of unintended pregnancies and therefore the number of abortions. For example, long-acting reversible contraception, or LARC. LARC drove a 50% reduction in teen births and abortions in Colorado by reducing unintended pregnancies. It is one of the nation's great success stories. And yet, it was the minority party in this chamber that stood in its way when they were in power. Or bills like Senate Bill 2116 that expanded access to contraception, STI treatment, and pre- and postnatal care. Those votes are all on the record. Add up what is going on in other states around the country as they race each other to develop and pass ever more appalling policies. And it is impossible to say with a straight face that American women aren't under threat from a national movement rooted in an ideology of using government authority to criminalize and punish them for their biology and exclude them from the protection of the Bill of Rights. This ideological agenda isn't about overturning Roe versus Wade. It's about a fundamental right to privacy for women that exists on the United States Constitution so that a state cannot use its powers to interfere in her life. Take that away, and you have made women less equal. It is that simple. So today, Colorado takes a stand. With this bill, we say, not here, not ever. We aren't going to stand by and simply wait to defeat attempts to take away our rights. We are going to take a stand now and protect the women and families across the state that we were sent here to protect. Today. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I urge your aye vote on the Reproductive Health and Equity Act.
Further discussion, Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam President. One of the most important and impactful decisions the Supreme Court has made for women in their freedom, independence, and well-being was in 1973. The landmark decision held that women in the United States had a fundamental right to choose whether to have an abortion without excessive government intervention and effectively struck down Texas's abortion ban as unconstitutional. Women went from having to travel hundreds of miles for risky procedures, back alley abortions, and some even using coat hangers, to having a protected right to an abortion. Women were no longer dying from unsafe procedures and were given the freedom to make their own decisions about their future. And women have been able to make these deeply personal decisions for themselves, with their doctors and their loved ones for 49 years. I just turned 40, so I have never known a world where this fundamental right was not protected. Over the years, I have been there for countless women, my friends, who have grappled with the decision of whether or not to become parents. Some faced an unexpected pregnancy when they were just teenagers. Some who have desperately tried for years to get pregnant, and unfortunately, when it finally happened, found out that their pregnancy was not viable. One friend even went for a checkup, and during the ultrasound, they didn't hear a heartbeat. And some who have ultimately turned to IVF, an amazing breakthrough that has helped some of my closest friends finally fulfill their dreams of becoming a mom. I could tell you story after story of the women in my life and the wide array of difficult decisions and struggles they have gone through when deciding if and when they want to start a family, and some of the difficult choices they have had to make because of their circumstances or because of heartbreaking medical conditions. And I've had my own struggles with this decision. While some of my friends always knew they wanted kids, that could not have been further from the truth for me. I dreamed about other things, and having kids seemed almost impossible. I was married 5 years ago, and there wasn't a day that went by that as a couple we didn't grapple with going back and forth on whether or not we wanted to move forward with starting a family. And then, what's the quote? Life happened while we were busy making other plans. And we found out that I was pregnant. Even though we were previously undecided, everything changed when we saw that extra line on that test. We decided that we wanted to be parents, and for me, it was absolutely the best decision I have ever made. But that was my decision to make, and we were lucky. We didn't face so many of the challenges that my friends had to face. We were in a place in our lives where we could take care of a child in a supportive relationship, and I had a healthy pregnancy. I know that for far too many women, this is not the case. It is unfathomable to me that one of the most personal decisions a woman will make in their life will likely be taken from them across this country. Even as we await the court's decision on Mississippi abortion ban, they have already allowed the Texas abortion ban to stand. People in Texas have had virtually no access to abortion care since September 1st. The governor of Wyoming just signed a bill to abolish abortion care when Roe v. Wade falls, and Idaho is currently passing a ban identical to Texas. 26 states are likely to ban abortion when Roe falls. Oklahoma, Utah, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, all of the states around us in this part of the country. And so we have an enormous responsibility, members. Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada will likely be the only place where people are able to access abortion care. It's not just women in Colorado who need us. It is the women across the country who will have to travel to Colorado from other states in order to get the care they need, who are relying on us. And we have already seen a significant increase in people coming to Colorado to get the care that they need. They are driving here through the night from Texas while their kids are sleeping in the back seat because politicians have made the health care that they need illegal, because they have placed a bounty on their heads. When we pass this bill, Coloradans will not wake up in a different state tomorrow. By passing this bill now, we affirm the status quo. We codify the laws that we have right now. But in anticipation of the Supreme Court ruling in June, this will ensure that people in our communities will be able to continue to make their own ethical decisions about their pregnancies. We can tell our constituents that we will keep them safe from the tidal wave of abortion bans that are about to wash through our country. This is happening right now. This legislature, in fact, has considered nearly 50 bills to ban abortion just in the past decade. And this year, the House has considered 2 abortion bans. The risk is very real. The journey of whether or not to become a parent is a deeply personal one. It is one of the most important decisions any of us will ever make in our lives. We cannot make that decision for anyone else, and we should not prevent anyone from making that decision for themselves. I trust my constituents, my family, my community, to make their own ethical decisions about their health care and their future. And I will vote yes for them and for the people across this country who I have never met, who will have to travel here to this safe haven to get the care that they need. I ask for your support, members.
Further discussion, Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Madam President. Yesterday, when we entered into the debate and came to the floor, we already knew the fate of this bill. We knew that there wouldn't be any amendments accepted. We know that the governor is going to sign the bill. I found it really ironic that we debated this bill on the same day of the anniversary of the killing of so many innocent people at that fated King Soopers in Boulder. I just thought that was ironic. My comments today will be brief, and quite frankly, they're not for this body. That's what we did yesterday. My comments today are directed at my 6 grandsons, 2 of whom are rainbow babies, which I explained yesterday. My comments are directed to young women in this state. At conception, a new, distinct human is created. That's science. Life is a continuous process. I believe every child has inherent worth and dignity and a right to life. I believe that a baby in his mother's arms should be just as valued as when that baby was in his mother's uterus. This bill, this debate, we try to mask it and say that abortion is health care. Abortion is not health care. Abortion does not sustain life. Abortion procedures, in most cases, are not even done by physicians. Abortion is a gruesome, horrific procedure that ends a human life. Please don't accept the stories we're being told about abortion being health care. Every single day in this country, unborn children have their life ended before they're able to draw their first breath. They are denied the freedom to live. Not because they did anything wrong. They're innocent. This bill is about unfettered access to abortion. This bill gives a woman the right, a fundamental right, to terminate her child's life. I stand in opposition to 1279.
Further discussion, Senator Hawkes Lewis.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I have such respect for everyone in this chamber, and he may not be sitting here right now, but I do want the minority leader to know how much I respect him and how much I've really enjoyed working with him, and I appreciate so many folks in this chamber. I spoke last night as the first Latina representing my district and representing Boulder County, and I didn't really get a chance to talk about how we are saving Latina and women of color lives with this bill. My mother, who comes from a long line of women in the San Luis Valley, her college roommate almost died from an illegal procedure, and I'm old enough to know stories like that, and that's who I think of when I was speaking last night and today. And I think about not only the higher rates of maternal morbidity and mortality that are going on now, but I also think about the higher rates of infant risk, and that's because of the health disparities. And so what I want to say about that relates to this bill is several speakers last night and even this morning have talked about that we need to do more for healthcare and not run legislation like this. Well, I have to say, we need your support in that legislation. I've run, with several of my colleagues, have run bills to increase health care for women and to help with care, and yet we don't always see the votes for those pieces of legislation. So I want to take this moment to encourage all of us to continue voting to support health care and reproductive rights and family planning services, because that's also what we need to see in this chamber, and that's another way of saving lives of Coloradans. And then I have to mention the personal story that I told last night about my 3 sisters. Lots of wonderful text messages about that story. I never really thought I would share that story when I was elected a senator, but my sisters' pregnancies were unintended. They were not planned. And they had the protection of Roe versus Wade. We may not have that any longer, and I cannot allow for women to have to make a choice like that where they cannot think about protecting their own health. It's just unconscionable to think that that could be the direction that we could be going. And then when I see some of the laws that are passing around the country now, the extremist practices that are targeting healthcare professionals. I mean, I had a House rep in this very chamber tell me that I was going to go to jail for filling a prescription under a bill that he was proposing. That is absurd, that we could think about locking up medical professionals that are trying to save lives. It also goes to the comments that were made of day of delivery abortions. I'm sorry, but those go against every medical guideline, every medical practice, and it's really an insult to medical professionals. That is just not going to occur, and I have to speak out about that as now the only licensed healthcare professional in the Senate. And the majority of Coloradans are with us. In 2020, 76% of Coloradans agreed that women should have the power to make decisions about their own bodies. And one more correction of the record. I can't help it, I'm just a fact-based person. That's how I was trained as a scientist. In Colorado, parents will be notified of a minor's choice. This law, 1279, doesn't change that. In fact, the Supreme Court, I'm not a lawyer, my mom is, in Bellotti versus Baird, minors can choose abortion, but the state cannot serve to be the absolute bar for that minor's choice. The law is already set. So what I want to close with is what I said last night, because this is really what the majority of Coloradans believe. Everyone deserves the freedom to make the medical choices based on their own circumstances. We must protect that right here, and that's why so many of us across the state are supporting 1279. Thank you.
Further discussion on 1279, Senator Janal.
Thank you, Madam President. And I will be brief. And colleagues, I do want to thank you as well for the debate last night and the civility. on both sides of the aisle. Thank you. I just want to share that as a scientist, a reproductive endocrinologist, last weekend I went through a number of journals and up-to-date textbooks and things of that nature to see if there was a consensus among scientists on when human personhood begins. And it varied. It varied from fertilization, from blastula to gastrula, and on through embryonic development. So there really isn't a consensus among scientists, especially reproductive endocrinologists, about when one becomes a human individual. And I'm not going to say or repeat everything that my colleagues who have spoke in support of 1279 have already done. But I just want to make it clear that I have fought for a woman's right to reproductive health care, and what she and her physician decide is the best for her and her family. And I will continue, even as a scientist, looking at it from a different angle, but I will continue to fight for a woman's right to choose until my very end. And therefore, I stand in full support of House Bill 1279.
Further discussion, Senator Fields.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to my colleagues. Like many of you, we all probably had sleepless nights. I know that I woke up this morning pondering about the rich discussion that we had yesterday as we debated House Bill 1279. I found the exchange that we had to be informative and insightful. And at the end of the day, members, I'm still voting yes on House Bill 1279 and hope that you will join me. I did listen to every single argument, and I did listen to every side. But for me, it comes down to one simple thing. Women have a moral right to decide what to do with their bodies. For me, it's about gender equality. It's about gender equality for that poor woman. It's about gender equality for the Black woman, the white woman, the biracial woman, the rural woman, the Latinx woman, the married woman, the indigenous woman, the immigrant woman, that woman of faith, that rape victim, that disabled woman, the Asian woman. It's for every woman to have the option and the choice to have a say about what they want to do with their bodies. A woman's body should never be up for debate. Never. You heard me say yesterday, we're not having any discussions about men's body parts. They're never put on the block for a debate about what they can or cannot do. Every woman should be able to decide if, when, and how, and with whom they want to start and grow a family with. I want our girls and our women to always seek to own their own reproductive rights and destiny without the interference of government. I don't want to have a debate about what I should be doing with my body. It's not the role of government for you to have a say over my birth canal. No politician can offer any suggestions to me about how to manage my fallopian tubes or my uterus. None of your business. Whether I choose to give birth or an abortion. It's a very personal and private decision, and it's not yours. It's my legal right for me to exercise the right to have an abortion if I choose to. And there's only two things that matter when we have this discussion about reproductive health care, this debate. And the debate is about two things, the way I see it. If you choose to involve your doctor's opinion, that's one thing. But ultimately, it is the will of that woman to exercise her human right if she chooses to. Pregnancy is a private and personal decision. And it should not require the permission of any politician. Once again, it's about gender equity. And a woman can have equal footing in our society if Big Daddy government creates barriers for women who want to seek abortion care or services that she needs. Why is the government involved in trying to legislate, mandate a woman's choice? During the debate, we had some very graphic, detailed descriptions about the fetus. But it seems like we get really bored and distracted when it comes to thinking about the child. The child that is delivered after a forced birth. What about the child? Is the church going to provide for that newborn? Is the scripture going to feed that newborn? Where is the focus and the attention on the child? What happens to many of the broken promises that maybe were shared with that woman?
Senator Fields, we just lost you. Give us just a moment.
Are we going to expand Medicaid? I know we've done that in our state, but some states have not expanded Medicaid in order to provide health care coverage for these kids. We're looking at situations where we won't even take away free and reduced meals, child care tax credits. If women can't control their own bodies, there's no democracy. So today I say it's time's up. I'm the only one that has a say over my body, not the state, not the county, not the politician, no bill. I get to make the decision. I own my own destiny as it relates to when I want to grow my family. It truly is time for government to get out of this business of trying to tell women what to do. when it comes to a woman's reproductive rights. I would suggest that this is not about winners or losers. This is about a woman's choice. It's about a woman's choice. And it's not about picking winners or losers. It's about understanding that every woman has a right to manage their own health care and the services that they need. And you can't mandate and force birth on a woman just because of your values. Members, I think it's time that we strengthen and protect women's rights to choose. That's what this is all about. It's time that all of us take a stand as relates to every girl, woman, and family, and have them choose what's best for their family. Enough's enough. So today, let's show the people of Colorado and the nation that we stand with women and their basic human right to choose what's best for them. So I hope you'll join me and you'll vote yes.
Further discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, thank you all. Judiciary colleagues, Senator from Denver, the sponsor of 1297, thank you for a civil discussion, even as the night grew long, both in Judiciary and here last evening. We disagreed, we continue to disagree, but we managed somehow through that all to continue to represent the people of Colorado in the way that they would expect each of us to conduct ourselves. Less is more in these particular moments because we had a good deal more last evening. And so uncharacteristically for me, I think, I will try to come to the point. One of the things I had an opportunity to do yesterday was, while sitting over there and having more from the well, was to take a look at Roe versus Wade and its progeny and 50 years of jurisprudence concerning abortion in America. And there's a lot of folklore and political rhetoric around all of that that causes even someone like myself to forget what is consistent through all of those cases. As the court, left and right, has struggled with what is a woman's right to choose, as it's been described here this morning and continually is. Even Roe versus Wade, and perhaps particularly Roe versus Wade, said that states could regulate abortion, could restrict abortion at the time of viability. Now, the Mississippi case Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health challenges that, and it causes perhaps House Bill 1297 to be before us today. Consistently, those cases say that states have a right, not a duty or an obligation, but that states have a right to reasonably restrict abortions, to protect maternal health, to protect potential human life, or a pre-birth human, as some choose as the euphemism, or a fetus, as others say. I find that the language one uses has to do with the language of one's, or the place of one's position on this issue. Interestingly enough, our constituents and citizens overwhelmingly, when you speak to them about this, just use the word baby. Another thing these cases all confirm is that the state has a legitimate interest in promoting respect for human life and avoiding what can only be described as the coarsening of our culture and the evolving loss of respect for human life. Yes, those cases speak to that as a legitimate interest of the state. Now, states don't have to do that. And Colorado, over the course of 25 or 30 years or more, as I discussed last night, has really arrived at the place that Colorado affords no protection whatsoever to the nascent human life prior to the moment of birth. What 1297 really does is to enshrine that in statute. And the passage of 1297 will mean that Colorado, by a majority of its General Assembly and the signature of its governor, Colorado has chosen to provide no protection whatsoever to a child prior to the moment of birth. None. This is not to say that the state should disregard a woman's right to choose, because clearly that exists. As I discussed yesterday, on the one hand, there's the protection of a woman's right to control her body and to choose what happens reproductively. On the other, there's an obligation of the state to protect the rights of every human being. And pregnancy and gestation present this dilemma of how to protect that life, the potential for life, some say, prior to the moment of birth. Once again, just to be very clear about 1297 and the state of the law in Colorado, Colorado chooses to provide no protection for the nascent human life. Some colleagues may say to me, well, that's our choice. Senator. That's our choice, and that's what we think is best. Let me just say very clearly and very hopefully cogently say to you what I would like you to take away this morning, each of you, however you vote, what the problem with that is. The problem is that it ascribes the moral value or makes the moral value of a baby pre-birth dependent upon whether he or she is wanted. I thought about this last night. That's sort of the subtext of all of this. If at 6 months of pregnancy that baby is wanted, and this became clear in the Judiciary Committee hearings as we heard all of those difficult stories, emotional on both sides, this became clear. If that baby was wanted, then there was value. And we all know in common culture and in our lives what that means. There's baby showers. But if that 6, 7 month, choose your word, being is unwanted, then it's trumped by a woman's right to choose completely, even though that pregnancy has progressed from 6 weeks to 12 weeks to 18 weeks, past viability, and then
Senator,
because it's unwanted.
your first 10, would you like to go into your second 10, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. So, consider that. The moral value of the fetus, the baby, the child, the pre-birth human. It's totally dependent upon I want you or I don't want you. Now, we heard stories, and you've heard them all, and you've heard them told here in the well. Emotional, heartrending, about suffering because of a pregnancy that was unexpected and unwanted, suffering because someone had a baby with serious defects. I think it rather ironic myself that today is Intellectual and Developmental Disability Awareness Day. But the second point I want you to take away from this is that this bill and everything that it represents by providing no protection whatsoever to the unborn legitimizes the dangerous notion that ending another's life is morally acceptable as an answer to human suffering. At any stage, at any time. We have an obligation to consider and legislate on the issues of the day, and this is not simply the issue of the day, it's the issue of the latter 20th century and apparently of the first half of the 20th century, or 21st century, and will continue to be so. It will never be over. It will never be over because the debate is about whether the moral value of a human being is dependent upon whether they're wanted or not. And also because the choice that's being made today legitimizes the notion that ending another life is morally acceptable when the suffering that might result because of that other life's infirmities or its burdens is morally acceptable. Members, I don't ask for an aye vote. I don't ask for a no vote. Those have all been asked for. I ask you to just consider the legislative choice and whether providing no protection whatsoever to the nascent human life is the choice that Coloradans would want us to make. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Senator. Further discussion? Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues. I want to start off by talking to you about my parents. I'm the daughter of Gloria Jean and Mario Gonzalez. My mom found out that she was pregnant with my oldest brother when she was in high school. She dropped out, got married, had my oldest brother Horton, and then my second brother Louis, and was widowed pretty quickly thereafter. I think she, if I remember correctly, was widowed with 2 kids under 3. And she realized that for her, her only way forward was going to be through education. And so she put herself through her GED. She spent years driving from Gardner to Alamosa, put herself through Adams State, and then when she was graduating, she invited my dad, who lived the next ranch over, to her graduation party. I'm the 6th out of 7 kids. And because for my mom, education was the way out, was the way through, she instilled that in me. I grew up being told that if I got good grades, that if I worked hard, that someday I'd go to college and get a good job and be able to raise a family and achieve the American dream. And so I did that. I was that kid. In middle school and in high school, I did everything that was asked of me. Graduated at the top of my class, and I got myself into a good college. But just weeks after I began that first year of college, the 9/11 terror attacks on the World Trade Center in New York City destabilized everything. And in that moment of crisis, I realized that I had no idea what to do. I found myself walking around campus and looking at other people's faces, searching for their reactions in the hopes that they would offer some insight on what to do or how to respond. I remember that fear and how it felt. I name that moment because it is but one moment of so many of what my generation has already experienced before we have turned 40 years old. 9/11, wars, recessions, mass shootings, the election of the first Black president, followed by the Trump presidency, a global pandemic that has laid bare so many of the structural inequities that we're all contending with now as Americans and now as a General Assembly. Colleagues, the past few years have been weird, destabilizing, off kilter. Like everything feels like it might be okay, but that it might just fall apart given the next phone call or given the next text message. Now, I've always believed in the power of organizing, of bringing people together, listening to them, and then finding a path forward to address the issues that confront us. And one of those central tenets of organizing is that no one person will ever have all of the answers, but that there's always answers if you ask community and you're willing to listen to what people say. But given that unease, given that off-kilter sensation that so many of us have felt, that it becomes harder to build connections, that sometimes it's an act of self-preservation to place less emphasis and priority on the whole, on community, in order to instead prioritize yourself or your family or your people. And that, colleagues, I submit to you that that's why these impending Supreme Court rulings are so deeply felt. Because they come amidst the tumult and unease of the past 2 years, where things that we thought would never happen, happened. And that feeling of unsettledness is palpable. Because this idea that I, as a woman, may no longer be able to make decisions about my life, about when to start a family, about whether to start a family, about what happens to me and my body. Those fears are not imagined. One only needs to look at what is taking place at state legislatures across the country and policies that have been proposed right here in our state, in Colorado. Half the nation would render abortions illegal the moment that Roe v. Wade falls. This General Assembly, has considered 44 bills here in our state to narrow or to limit or to abolish altogether abortion care since 2010. Colleagues, we heard much debate and discussion. And that debate was filled with decorum until it wasn't. That extremist rhetoric, those tired, old, racist tropes that has silenced so much of the conversation around this issue and led to stigma and shame and silence, For folks who seem to be so preoccupied with life, those bans lead to an increase in maternal mortality. The response from the minority party in this chamber and across the country so often is to resolve issues by privatizing them. That is, until it comes to a woman's rights to make decisions about her own body. Y'all, this is about power. We heard powerful, heart-wrenching debate about some of the most personal, sacred, difficult, beautiful moments in people's lives. I printed out the testimony from one of my constituents. But I don't actually think that individual Coloradans should have to bare their souls and bear those most difficult experiences in order to try to convince politicians that they should be able to make their decisions about what's best for them as a family. I don't think that that's our role. Those decisions are best made by those pregnant Coloradans and their families and their doctors, not us. Since 1967, Colorado has been a leader in ensuring access to abortion care. And now, in this post-Dobbs v. Jackson's Women Health Organization world, as the Supreme Court contends with a potential post-Roe v. Wade future, it is time for Colorado to lead again, to get government out of those most fundamental of decisions. So that whatever your personal belief, whatever your personal decision regarding your health care, regarding your body, is respected. And with that, colleagues, I appreciate each one of you. I ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1279.
The motion is the passage of House Bill 1279. Are there any no votes? Senators: Minority Leader Holbert, Cook, Woodward, Priola, Smallwood, Rankin, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Gardner, Lundin, Simpson, Heisey, Sonnenberg, Scott, Coram. With a vote of 20 ayes, 15 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1279 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Donovan, members, I believe you are on it, but just to be sure, if you want to be certain, you can raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Majority Leader Moreno, Janal, Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, Thursday, March 24th.
The motion is to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the balance of the calendar will be laid over to tomorrow. Deliver it to the governor.
March 23rd, 2022, to the governor for signature on Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022 at 10:32 a.m. Senate Bill 20, 30, 50, and 92.
Announcements. Senator Sonnenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. You got one of these great little reminders on your desk today. I want to remind you that you will have an opportunity to have a steak tomorrow with the Logan County Cattlewomen across the street at the Baptist Church. Evidently, the word got around, so thank you, because it appears the governor called these cattlewomen and would like to attend as well. So, look forward to seeing you there tomorrow night. I will again remind you tomorrow when we do the Ag Day resolution, but thank you.
Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to announce that there will be no Capital Development Committee meeting tomorrow morning, Thursday. Thank you.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. A moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Members, it's really an honor and a pleasure to represent rural Colorado, in particular the San Luis Valley, where we're the second largest potato producing region of the United States. There's wonderful bags of homegrown potatoes in the back there from my neighbors and friends in the San Luis Valley, the Mativi and Worley family, the Rocky family, and the Paul New family. I believe there's some yellows and red potatoes back there. Please help yourself. There was also a nice cookbook outlining, wonderful recipes. It's, again, such an honor and privilege to represent those folks and what we do there. Man, there are dozens of varieties of potatoes grown in the San Luis Valley. The reds, the yellows, whites. There's actually blue potatoes. There's fingerlings. It's an amazing place. If you get the opportunity, come down and I can show you around and hook you up with an abundance more potatoes, I'm sure. So Colorado Potato Administrative Council brought those and the cookbooks, and I encourage you to go to their website and learn more about the amazing industry in Colorado, the potato growers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I request a moment of personal privilege?
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. To continue the comments of my good colleagues on agriculture, delivered to your office. If it hasn't, please let us know and we'll figure out how to get you one. But the Ag Week traditional goodie bag, sponsored by many people, including the egg producers, Give Us the Bag, the Colorado Farm Bureau, Beef Council, etc. I challenge all of you, including the guy in the cowboy hat that just left the chamber. If you can't name a producer like Senator Simpson just did, if you can't name the family that is producing eggs or producing beef or growing the vegetables growing the beets to make our sugar, go meet one of them and learn their family's surname and have that same pride that he has when he lists off the names of people who are growing red and yellow potatoes, as he says it. Learn their names, because these families are a remarkable part of feeding Colorado, feeding us, and feeding the world. They're downstairs right now in the West Foyer. Meet them there. Go meet some beef producers tomorrow at the steak fry. Take the good senator from the Valley up on his offer. Go eat a potato out of the dirt if you've never done that. Take advantage and learn more about this wonderful industry that is the soul of this state, and it's the history of where this state came from. And I'll leave with a helpful hint of this cutting board. It is great for camping. So there you go. What gets more Colorado than that? A beef cutting board for camping. Thank you, friends.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Just briefly, I've spoken to the minority leader and the majority leader and you and asked for permission to be able to zoom in on Friday morning.
I suppose we'll grant.
Please.
Just a reminder, though, members, the protocol for requesting a remote is you can just simply send an email or consult with the majority minority leader. Not necessary to request permission at the well.
So noted. Thank you.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Health and Human Services Committee will meet at 1:30 today, and we'll be hearing 3 bills, 1153, 147, and 1209. We are not hearing Senate Bill 149 today.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just as a reminder, if you RSVP'd to the IDD Awareness Day for a boxed lunch, your boxed lunch will be down at the old Supreme Court just outside, and they will ask you to pick up your Oscar to be an IDD All-Star, as well as walk the red carpet. It's a really fun event that they are filming. They give you an opportunity for you to say hello to any of your member organizations that are in your district, and they are broadcasting this to all of their members who are watching from home. So if you have a moment to go walk the red carpet and pick up your lunch, I know that they would appreciate that.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judiciary Committee will not be meeting on adjournment today. The bills from today will be moved over to tomorrow's calendar. So tomorrow we will be hearing Senate Bill 150, Senate Bill 5, Senate Bill 1082, excuse me, House Bill 1082, House Bill 1237, House Bill 1226, and House Bill 1228 in a lengthy Judiciary Committee hearing. And that'll be in the normal room, 352. Thank you.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate recess until 3 p.m. today. Colleagues, you do not need to return. We're just reading a couple of bills across the desk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will recess until 3 p.m. today.